So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we start this evening with public comment, which is very germane tonight, as this is a public forum inviting comments about our proposed 2026-27 operating and capital budgets. However, I need to read our caveats, so let me do that. The board welcomes the opportunity to hear from members of the public about matters concerning the Weston schools. Public comments an important chance for the board to receive input and feedback. We listen attentively. While we value and pay close attention to public comment, it is our practice not to respond substantively or sometimes at all during public comments. There are reasons for this. First, engaging in a discussion on non-agenda items could violate the board's obligations to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Second, the board or the administration may not be prepared to discuss certain matters raised in the first instance by public comment. Third, the board develops its meeting agenda carefully to ensure that the board addresses matters that are pressing or relevant at the time of the meeting. We encourage members of the public with very specific questions, concerns, or complaints about our schools to reach out directly to Superintendent Forty. You may also email the board at boardofeducation@westonps.org. All right, so having said all that, Jody, are there public comments this evening?
I do see a few people who are sitting out here as attendees. If you are interested in speaking, please do me a favor and click the little raise hand button that is at the bottom of your screen. I will call you one by one. I'm your address. Turn on your camera when I promote you to a panelist, and then you will have 5 minutes to speak, and I will let you know when your time is up. I am going to start with the first individual, Lisa. I am going to promote you to a panelist. You're going to see something come across the bottom of your screen. You're going to click on that. You will be promoted to a panelist. Okay, Lisa, you can turn your camera on, state your full name, and state your street address for us, please. And you are on mute right now. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And I'll start your 5 minutes as soon as you start speaking.
Okay, my name's Lisa Yonchi. I'm at 9 Partridge Lane. I first want to say I want to thank you guys so much for doing this public forum through Zoom, and just in general, the transparency that you've done with both the budget and Board of Ed meetings. I feel fully informed, and I'm just really proud of the transparency that this town is doing with these important decisions being made. I also want to thank the superintendent for coming to the PTO meeting that I attended to explain the budget. I thought it was thoroughly helpful, and I thought she was really receptive to a lot of the comments that were given. What I want to say tonight is not explicitly towards the budget, which I 100% approve and think was very thoughtfully done. It's about the middle school project that is sort of in the background of this budget. Specifically, I wanted to respond to the brick and mortar newsletter with the breakdown as to both the steps and the brainstorming going on. The concern I wanted to bring up is the idea of rethinking the breakdown of the Hurlbut, Wiss, and middle school as it is right now. I have a child at Hurlbut and a child at Wiss who went through the Hurlbut system. Both of my children have had an amazing experience in the Weston school system. I have a 4th grader and a current 1st grader. I say all the time that not a week goes by that I'm not truly thankful that my kids are in the school system. I think a huge part of why Hurlbut and Wiss are successful, which then bleeds into the successfulness of the middle school and high school, is because we have one school for pre-K to 2 and another school for 3 to 5. That breakdown and then to have a separate middle school allows the kids to grow according to the age development that's needed and have the kind of support they're needed as well as the independence that they need. So while I really applaud all the brainstorming that's going on with the Board of Ed, I truly hope as you guys focus on the middle school infrastructure project that you hold to the breakdown of pre-K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 8, which I think has been a crucial element into both the vibe of our community as well as the success that we've seen in our school districts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Give me just one moment. I'm going to move you back to an attendee.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, the next person, Chad, I am going to promote you to a panelist. You're going to see something come across the bottom of your screen. Please click the button and you will be joining the webinar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. My name is Chad Hepner. I live at 25 White Birch Road. I will jump right into it. I wrote my comments down because I want to make sure I stick to 5 minutes, and you know you have a busy evening. I hope to reframe some of the ways in which we envision our budget process. I was on the Board of Ed just last year, so I sat in your seats and I went through all the same things you're considering now. Last spring, we had a painful reckoning. Because of the budget decisions we had made in the fall, in the spring, the district had to fire some of the most beloved teachers and reduce some of its most cherished programs. I didn't know explicitly the human and educational cost that those 0.5% and 0.25% decisions would make when I voted yes on the final budget, but I saw it clearly in the spring when we fired some of our kids' favorite teachers. I vividly remember in one of our budget meetings pushing as forcefully as I could to arrest the direction we were heading in of trying to carve off every 10th a percentage point we possibly could. And if you recall, the boundary we came back from would have also meant losing one of only 2 musical productions and the cheerleading program, not to mention more of the teaching staff. In the spring, I regretted that I hadn't pushed much, much harder. So please, this year, in the future, let's avoid passing budgets that necessitate a bunch of unwelcome terminations in the spring. And even more audaciously, I don't think expand should be a dirty word. I don't mean budgets, I mean vision. But I also don't think that increased budget should be taboo. We live in a community where many parents pay the same teachers who teach their kids during the day to tutor their kids in the afternoon at the Weston Library. People want to invest in their children. They want to invest in their schools, and they also want to know that that investment is supporting visionary world-class 21st century education. So expand where? Expand our focus on science and math, especially at 5th through 8th. Expand the number of enrichment resources, more robotics, more of the book vending machines that are treasured at WIS, more chances for our kids to explore music and art. As a parent, I find it bewildering that we have so many kids who want to be in robotics or Project Challenge or the performing arts only to find limited spots. How many of those programs could have a second or third or fourth section added? Expand innovative ways to use the campus. We can offer night classes, community events, and drive both financial benefit for the district and community appreciation of our physical spaces. Those are just some of my ideas as a board and an administration. I'm sure you have lots of others. So instead of asking our administration the same zero-sum questions intended to justify shaving off a 1/10 of a point here or there, why not ask them questions that put their first-class skills and training to use? Here are just a couple. Superintendent Forte, you have an incredible track record of doing innovative things with limited resources. Question, how will you lean on community expertise in this budget to get world-class resources or expertise for limited money? Dr. Henkel, where is your exceptional background and scholarship in project-based learning leveraged most powerfully in this year's budget? And how can you do more of that without bloating line items? Everybody, given the thrilling accolades that Weston garnered last year, Blue Ribbon, etc., which aspects of the Curriculum Instruction Leader Program are worth expanding? And are there any that are worth sunsetting? For everybody, are the American Reading Company materials worth it? Are you happy with them in year 3, I think it is? Are they good enough? Should we augment them somehow? Could we get those books secondhand? If they're not that great, could we get better ones? Have we really interrogated the technology tools? I mean, really, are we paying money for equipment, devices, apps, software that are actually hurting our kids' cognition? I know I have this reputation, but don't just listen to me. Listen to the testimony that Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, a former teacher turned cognitive neuroscientist, gave to the Senate last week. Here's an excerpt. Once countries adopt digital technology widely in schools, performance goes down significantly to the point where kids who use computers about 5 hours per day in school for learning purposes will score over 2/3 of a standard deviation less than kids who rarely or never touch tech at school. And later in his testimony, he distills this to one sentence. When tech enters education, learning goes down. So these are just some of the questions that I think we should ask. And I know what you might be thinking. These are great questions, but they belong in curriculum committee meeting. And I would say, no, they don't. They belong here because those are the kind of questions that will lead us to fixing, not firing. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Chad.
Yeah, thank you
Give me-
very much. Thank you. And Chad, I'm sorry, the other forum, you came late and we didn't recognize you at that point. So anyway, thank you for coming back. Appreciate
You
it.
shouldn't apologize for that. That should be on me for being late. So
That's
thank you
okay.
for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I'm going to move you back to an attendee now. Okay. The next person is Aaron Burakoff. Aaron, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Give me just a moment. You're going to see something come across the bottom of your screen, and please click it to accept. Okay. Okay, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind turning on your camera and turning on your microphone, state your full name for us and your street address, please. And then you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Burakoff. I live at 38 Northfield Woods Road. I just wanted to join the meeting this evening just to voice my strong feeling as a parent of 3 here in Weston who moved here to Weston because of the great school system that we have, and as a parent of 3 who's so appreciative for the great education that my children are getting here in town. That I just wanted to voice my strong feeling that we continue to invest in our schools and not over scrutinize the line items relating to staffing. We all know this from research that's been done. Individualized education is paramount for high quality education. So I'm all for putting my tax dollars toward ensuring that we have enough teachers and enough curriculum implementation liaisons to support the individualized attention that we all want our kids to have. And, you know, as Chad mentioned, we have so many parents here in town who are investing beyond school hours in their children's education. It's just so clear that we're also devoted, or so many here in town are devoted to really trying to help our children thrive. And that's what we love about the school system here. And Chad mentioned this too, but I wanted to add that, you know, we were really disheartened to see some of the teachers we loved let go at the end of the last school year. And we just don't want to see that happen again. So I know I'm not alone in this position and sharing these thoughts. You've already heard them from Lisa and Chad. You'll probably hear from others. And I suspect there are many, many more who I've talked about these same feelings that we have at the community events in town. They become friends in town, in part because of our shared commitment to the community and the education that our kids are getting here. And they may not join because they're busy Ubering their kids around to events or getting their younger kids off to bed. I just want to note there are so many of us here in Weston who do place this top priority on the education and investing in our children and their education. So I just wanted to share these thoughts, and again, ask that we support the BOE's requested budget. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your comments, Erin. I'm going to bring you back to an attendee now. And that is it for public comment. I don't see any other hands raised. No other participants.
All right, thank you, Jody.
Mhm.
Maybe just keep an eye on it for another 5-10 minutes, and we can interrupt if we need to. Okay, so that leads us directly into our continued discussion on our operating and capital budget. Eric, Superintendent Forty, I will turn it over to you in terms of organizing the topics we addressed tonight.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So at the last meeting, we concluded the staffing section. We are going to move into the next section that has a few questions on transportation. I'm going to turn it over to Phil, who will answer the first transportation question, and then we'll call on Tracy to pop in for the second question.
Thank you, Erica. Good evening, everyone. There's a question raised about a review of our overall transportation. So as you guys may know, the board may know, historically, Weston has low ridership on all of our buses. And for us, reduced enrollment does not necessarily translate to we do not see a direct correlation to reduced enrollment to our ridership level. So during COVID afforded us a really good opportunity to evaluate all of our runs to find efficiencies. During that process, when we were short drivers, you may all remember, most of you will remember how painful it was when we had to combine most of our buses. Through that experience, we did carefully reduce one bus, and that was done very carefully to minimize disruption to families and also to not extend the ridership longer than what it needed to be. When we were combining our buses, we found that children were on the buses for beyond an hour, and that is not our practice. So we have to be mindful into when we review transportation. We have to remember that our transportation fleet also serves our athletic charter. We have to remember that the same buses that we use for the high school and middle school also serves our lower grades. Any disruption that we have in the first year, which is the high school and middle school, will directly impact the K-5 or our lower grades. With that being said, we have requested, I've reached out to First Student to evaluate our runs to see if there is any possibility of us reducing the bus fleet even further. So we should have word on that hopefully by Monday before our next budget workshop or junior workshop.
Thank you, Phil. The next question, Tracy, would you mind? It was from Nicole on the Early Learning Center transportation.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. A similar question from Nicole about, is there a need for 2 vans to support the ELC program, given the number of students who ride on each van? And as Phil talked about in his response, it's not just about number of students on a vehicle. So we can't exceed a certain duration of time, an hour, on the various routes. And so we need to take into consideration where we are transporting students. And right now, there is no way to get all of the students home in the time that we need on one vehicle. So again, less about number of children and more about duration of ride.
Thank you. Does the board have any additional questions specific to transportation, as those were our only 2 questions?
No, but thank you, Phil, for reaching out and asking the question at least, because each bus is around 80,000, or I'm not sure what the number is, but it could be significant if we can reduce even by one. So thank you for investigating that.
I do have one question, just just verification. Phil, if I remember correctly, we do have very low ridership, but I think two things are true. We still have to offer transportation for everybody. So a bus has to pass, for example, my road, where I don't think very many kids, if any, take the bus. And so the loop, even though they're not picking up and dropping off kids, the loop or the routes, that would remain the same, right?
That is correct.
And if can parents totally opt out, and would that change anything if they did?
We have explored that, but we haven't really dived into it to see if we allow parents. One of the difficulties that we have, David, is that by state law, we have to afford a seat for everyone that's enrolled in the district. So we do not have that information when we're applying our roads to identify those students who will not be right in. It is something to consider as we plan our routes for each year, and as we start up the year, if we can allow the families to opt out of transportation.
Okay, but that's not something that we would have ready to go for this budget.
Not for this budget, no.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further questions, we're gonna roll into the next section, which are some additional questions that surfaced from board members in previous meetings, and provide some responses to those. The first question is from David, and it is it safe to assume that this proposed budget includes less than 1% of the increase going towards instructional materials and resources to support teaching and learning? Is this 1% outside of benefits and salary a reasonable number for the district to be planning for in the future? And what was this percentage the last 3 years, not including salaries and benefits? So to the first part of the question, yes, the increase is less than 1% for those instructional materials and resources that would support teaching and learning. For the second part of the question, it really depends if it's reasonable to say that this is what we need to plan for moving forward and if it's sustainable. It depends on the curriculum initiatives and when the district is in a formal cycle for wide-scale program adoption relative to science, math, reading, or social studies. And for the next part, it was less than 1% of the total budget increase over the last 3 years. And as a reminder, just as an aside, 1% of this current proposed budget is a little more than $600,000. So if we don't have any more questions or follow-up comments on that question, we can move into the next one. And that will be Julie.
Good evening, everyone. As part of a previous discussion, particularly surrounding the budget for substitutes, there was a follow-up question that was asked regarding our teacher attendance. And so we're bringing you this evening some information related to historical classroom teacher attendance. So, Dr. Hinkle, if you could just adjust to the next slide. Great. So this chart, as have been others that we have shown you, is from EdSite. It's publicly available data, and it shows you the historical data for average days absent amongst classroom teachers. And we're showing you teachers specifically because that is the largest group that requires substitute coverage. The data spans back to the 2021 school year. And you can see Weston's data specifically is shown in blue as compared with the state average, which is shown in yellow. It's easy to see the data reflects that average classroom teacher attendance in Weston is relatively aligned with statewide trends. I should note that this is attendance data related to teacher absences for illness or personal reasons, which would include personal and family illness days, workers' compensation, personal business, bereavement, religious holidays, and jury duty. So it's a pretty comprehensive look. I will note that data from the school years 2021 and 21-22 should be interpreted with caution because, as you know, these school years were significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the 2021 school year data appears low because a good portion of absences that year were due to required quarantines and not specifically for personal illness or personal reasons on the part of teachers. So the 22-23 and 23-24 data more accurately reflect typical levels of staff attendance or staff absence, I should say, in Weston. And while the 24-25 data is not yet available on EdSite, I can share with you that Weston's data will show the average holding steady at around 13 days. Relevant to the conversation, the contract, as you know, between the Board of Education and the Weston Teachers Association provides for 2 days of personal leave annually and 15 days of sick leave annually, which may be carried over in future years up to a maximum of 187 days. So in light of this information, we do believe that the substitute budget that we have planned for is appropriate, knowing that this is the historical level of absence and that projecting forward that is unlikely to shift significantly next year.
Thank you, Julie. Does anybody have any follow-up questions?
I do. So what 23-24 says is that Weston teachers, in a sense, behave like all the other state of Connecticut teachers. No, I'm not quite sure how you put a gauge on this. No better, no worse. But that's what the state of Connecticut teachers do. If we aspire to having more teacher days in the classroom, because that may relate to higher test scores. Is it conceivable, or has it ever been practiced to incentivize teachers to sort of not miss their days for schools for other reasons? Is that plausible? Because a few extra days could mean a few better test scores, and not just settle for doing what the rest of the state average does. So that's just sort of my input.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because so often absences are for really significant and legitimate reasons that are outside of our teachers' control, right? It is our preference for people to stay home when they are ill. We do not want to, in a school environment, promote the spread of illness. There are things that are outside of people's control when we talk about bereavement days, jury duty, workers' compensation. Those are things that are unanticipated. There are also, shorter term leaves that are part of this that fall under perhaps eligibility under family and medical leave. So I understand, obviously, we want to ensure that our teachers are in the classroom as much as possible and maintaining that contact time with students and recognizing that they are humans and that there are things that happen in life, and we want to promote their safety and well-being as much as we can as well, because that also translates into the experience that students have in the classroom. So I think there are opportunities for us to look at ideas that might help promote attendance where it might be able to shift more positively toward additional time in the classroom. But I think it would also be unrealistic to expect that there would be a significant shift because truly we all know there are things that happen in everyday life that require us to be out of work from time to time.
I just have a follow-up question. These are, absence because, of either illness or other uncontrollable situations. So my question is, to what extent are teachers pulled out of the classroom for other reasons such as professional development or meetings, and especially with the advent of coaches, et cetera, have those days lessened so that we have teachers actually in the classroom more than going out for workshops? And I'm not against professional development at all, but to Peter's point about teachers being in the classroom as much as possible.
It's a really great point. There are, of course, other reasons that pull teachers out of the classroom, and you mentioned some of them: professional development, school business things such as meetings, field trips. And what I would say to that is that those types of absences are reviewed very carefully by a variety of players. So for instance, when there is a request by a teacher for professional development time, those requests are reviewed by both the building level principals as well as Dr. Henkel's office, including understanding the purpose of that professional development, the timing of it, and attendance is a factor in making those decisions. I know that Dr. Henkel in particular is very aware of the amount of time that professional development can take teachers out of the classroom, and really seeking to balance the benefits of how does that time away enhance the experience for students when the teachers come back into the classroom. And similarly with field trips have a very significant review process as well. School business absences are reviewed through our principals. So while there are other activities that take teachers out of the classroom, there's a lot of oversight over those types of absences, because we are really invested in ensuring that to the extent possible, our teachers are in the classroom. And when we are pulling them out, that it's for very purposeful and significant reasons.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on that particular item? Okay, we are moving on. One of the questions was about modeling the reduced elementary sections using the low projection model. We posted those documents under the supplemental budget documents on our website, and so they're posted there, and we also emailed the board members PDF copies of those. The next question was specific to what are the historical sixth grade class sizes? So Tina, if you can just advance the slide.
Sorry, I'm not doing good tonight. Hold on.
No, you're doing just fine. There we go. All right. So we took the October 1 snapshots for district enrollment that we report to the state as part of our compliance reporting from October 1, 2021 through this past October 1st, 2025. And you can see the trend goes from 176 students in 2021 to 183 in 2022, down to 151 in 2023, down a little bit more in 2024 to 142 students, and then back up in 2025 to 172 students. The SLAM's median projection for next year is 171 students. Any questions?
What's the current class size for fifth grade right now then?
Hang on one second. I'm gonna have to look that up.
I think that's in our books. I'm sorry. I could have looked it up as well, but I'm just curious if the medium has the class growing, shrinking, or staying the same.
October 1, grade 5 is 158.
And they're expecting it to grow? That's it.
That's the medium projection, yes.
I wonder if it's grown in the past. That's something that we should. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Erica, can you show us, so I know this came up at one of our previous meetings where, I think a little bit to Sharon's point, so there's some expectation that the 6th grade is going to grow between spring and fall. And the number of sections for 6th grade, I think you had them, you modeled out, but do we have the 6th grade by itself? I know I saw a slide that had 8, 7, and 6 sections, and I think we discussed 7 is really not a doable number because of the dyad model. So do you have, or can you remind us, with 8 sections, I believe my numbers are correct, with 8 sections of 6th grade, we would have X number of open seats, and with 6 sections of 6th grade at 172, we'd have Y number of open seats. Is that
David, the dyad is for 5th grade. 6th grade is teaming.
Oh, sorry.
So that's why the odd number was for 5th grade. Yeah.
Sorry. I recall my question. Never sent it.
Thank you.
I guess I would just be nervous. I would like to take a look because it does sound like a big jump. I mean, that's a pretty substantial jump for going from 5th grade to 6th grade. It's not like a typical year that kids make a lot of changes in schools. And so I would be curious how that number compares with previous growth from 5th to 6th to make sure that we are on track, realistically on track.
Yes, we can follow up on that to take a look to make sure that,
Yeah, just a trend, 5th to 6th.
Yeah,
trend 5th to 6th from 2021 to 2025. That'll help to make sure that the SLAM projections are what we've seen in the past and what we should be gearing up for.
Sure.
And just to prove I had tuned back in, I think we looked at this, and I think the issue, if I remember correctly, was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is because we have the real teaming model. You'd have to see a significant, and I mean beyond, I think, any number we could anticipate, reduction, because you would destroy the teaming model, which we obviously don't want to do. So if I remember correctly, I think we did look at a couple of these scenarios, and I agree with you, Sharon. The number seems aggressive or inspirational, but even if the number wasn't that, if it was someplace in between, or even if it stayed at 150 some odd students that moved up, we would destroy the teaming model if we got rid of a section.
Okay, so you know what? To your point, David, absolutely right. Erica, I'm just being nosy. You do not need to go and get that information for me. It's fine. I can go to other charts that we've had in the past, and I can get that information. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's in the report we heard earlier on enrollment projections. He has the whole history laid out.
I can find that, and that's not, I don't want to put that on you guys. You've got enough stuff going on, so I'll take a look.
All right, great. If nobody else has any questions, we are going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to turn it over to Tina.
Great. I too have an additional follow-up question, which is related to a previous response regarding multi-tiered systems of support and our framework in providing math and reading academic support for students. The previous question that this is linked to is from questions 30 through 33. And so the question is, how do our interventionists fill their day and their schedule? So I want to be able to go through some criteria and some constraints on how our interventionists build their schedule and the information that they use to do so. And then we'll look at an actual sample that I analyzed in the district with one of our full-time interventionists as well. So interventionist schedules are developed collaboratively with building administrators, our curriculum and instruction leaders, and the goal is to maximize their instructional time while, of course, adhering to the multi-tiered system of support guidelines that I mentioned and reviewed back in that previous few questions. I can't remember if it was last time or the time before. So when we talk about how a interventionist builds their schedule, it's important to understand that this is not a traditional teaching schedule. It's a multi-layered process driven first and foremost by student data. And therefore, at minimum, these schedules change at minimum, they change every time that we administer our universal screening assessments, DIBELS 8, for example, NWA, for example, in the fall, winter, and the spring, because we administer those assessments 3 times a year. We identify which students need additional support in reading or math and determine whether that support should be provided at a tier 2 or tier 3 level. So once students are identified, the group size becomes a major constraint. So we talked first about the student need and at what level based on that data. So tier 2 groups are limited to 3 to 5 students, and tier 3 groups are even smaller, typically 1 to 3 students in a group. So group size and is also a constraint. So students can also only be grouped together if they are working on the same targeted skill or standard, which then also creates a significant limit on how that group is formed. So we are looking at making sure that once we identify the students, we then group those students based on their shared goals. And depending on the tiered level of support that they need, it's the size of that group that we can put students together in. And then the next layer is instructional intensity. So as I mentioned, if a student needs tier 2 support and intervention, that is typically provided 3 times per week. And if they need tier 3 intensive support, that is required within our MTSS guidelines to be provided 4 to 5 times per week. So this level of frequency is intentional. It's designed to accelerate student growth so that students can successfully exit MTSS rather than remain in intervention for the long term. So in addition to that, it is required that in order to see that accelerated amount of growth, when students are receiving intervention, the time that they're working needs to be a minimum of 30 minutes in length, which then also provides an additional constraint and flexibility when an interventionist is building their schedule. So when you combine all these minimum session lengths, the group size, the repeated weekly sessions, the schedule fills up pretty quickly. So interventionists also build in time for tier 1 monitoring. And this is particularly important because it supports students' transition between the tiers so that when they are exiting tier 2 or tier 3 support, we want to make sure that we're gathering enough data, progress monitoring data, to fully exit the program and the framework independently. So we want to make sure we have that information, whether that be small group instruction where we're gathering that data in the classroom or providing a little bit additional support so that we are confident that they can work independently on grade level without some additional support. So in addition to all of those MTSS guidelines, as I went through, the instructional planning must also happen within the contractual expectations, right? Just like any other teacher. An interventionist does have to follow the constraints of the contract as well, which means that they also have to have a 30-minute duty-free lunch. Throughout the week, they are required to have 300 minutes of prep time each week. And they also are required to have a duty which is approximately 25 minutes. And those are determined at the school level depending on the need. So those are some of those constraints that we have to take into consideration when we're building out a robust and comprehensive schedule. So what I then did is took a sample schedule and started to analyze time and minutes and where their emphasis of support was within a given week, right? Because when I'm talking about those scheduling constraints, it's not a day, it's within the week in order to serve the groups that need tier 3 intervention, which is about size and about intensity. and all the way down to some of the other contractual limitations too when we're looking at their schedule. So this table represents an intervention schedule. You could see that 67% of their work week is spent providing student academic support, whether that be any one of the 3 tiers, and that's where their greatest concentration of time is. You can see that tier 3, of course, is gonna need more time because they have to be seen a minimum of 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes within a time frame, within a session, 4 to 5 times per week. So those students are with an intervention for a longer, more consistent period of time within a week. You'll also see that students receiving tier 3 support typically, I started to correlate what is the minutes, what percentage is that within a week based on the number of minutes within somebody's work week. So this kind of overlaps some of that information, but I did not include their lunch. So I really focused on the contractual time, the duty time, the tiered support that the interventionists are providing, and then also there is a common planning time to analyze data, make decisions around the instructional delivery model for students within the tiers as well, because they are part of the MTSS process, and to be effective, part of that is looking at progress monitoring data, and we talked about that before. Michael asked a question specifically about how are we making decisions and determining whether or not students are moving up and down within the tiers, and that's where that progress monitoring and collaboration comes into play. And then finally, the last table is another summary of the instructional intensity each student receives based on their level of need within the sample schedule that I mentioned and that I use this data based off of. So you'll see that tier 3 support receives the most intensive amount of time throughout a week. And within this schedule in particular, that's about 7 to 9 students. And then it goes down because I think one of the questions, Deb, I think this was your follow-up question, I can't remember, but how many students are they typically serving? So based on this interventionist schedule, this is approximately the number of students they serve within a week and the number of minutes and allocation of time just within the tiered level of academic support that they provide. So in closing, it's important to emphasize that I hope that this helps provide a little bit further detail around the flexibility that is needed for the interventionist, the fact that this is not a schedule that is built that is as clean as maybe a classroom teacher with classes that are determined based on blocks of time throughout the day, but that it is a multi-layered approach, and it's it's flexible in that it adjusts throughout the year based on the data and the students that they have and the performance of the students throughout the school year, and the data that we're gathering from either the interventions that they're receiving or the universal screening assessments that we're providing and administering 3 times a year. So it's often like a jigsaw puzzle. If I actually showed you the schedule, you would see that the color codes and the correlation between the different tiers and the number of times that they meet with different students based on their goals looks just like a jigsaw puzzle. Each piece, each student need, each group size, the instructional intensity, the session length, and all that coupled with the constraints of the contract as well has to fit together in order to make sure that the system works and works efficiently and we're maximizing their time. I'll end there and open it up for any questions.
No, thanks.
Hey,
No
hey,
questions for
Tina.
me.
Oh,
That's
I'm sorry.
good.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Deb?
Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
Deb went on mute, but I can hear you, Michael. Go ahead.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Apologies. I'm traveling all around tonight, and so my camera's off. Question for you, just quickly, Tina, on this. In this cohort of individuals, what is the turnover in this cohort? I can't imagine. I mean, that seems like a pretty challenging schedule, right? For some, I could see how it could be, at least. Um, do those people who are in this cohort, do they like the schedule? Is there a lot of churn that you're seeing from this cohort? Just curious as to from their perspective, is this a schedule that they enjoy, that they tolerate, that people are in for a short period of time? Just curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say that it's an intense process to build the schedule in response to the student need, but it's critical in order to maximize the MTSS framework that we've developed, right? We don't want students to be receiving intensive academic support if they don't need it, right? We want them to maximize their time in the classroom. And so I think there's a level of intensity around these schedules, as I described before, because they're reallocated and redesigned, for lack of a better term. They're redesigned every single time that students are either exiting their goals, or if they're exiting because the universal screener that we're administering is showing that they've grown enough and the gap has closed, so they don't need as much support. So I think that an interventionist, that the model that I used here, this individual is good at what they do, and they're really good at building their schedule quickly. And so we just completed we're in the middle of completing the winter screening. And so this sample schedule is actually just rebuilt. So it's actually good timing. And the question was good timing so that it was more, relevant given the question and when it was asked. So these are rebuilt, like I said, a minimum of 3 times a year. And sometimes, depending on the success of the students within their interventionist, sometimes they're adjusted even between the fall, winter, and spring administration.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
I do have a question
Sure.
on the number of interventionists that we have. So I wear my gray hair stripes on the Board of Ed because I remember when we received ESSER funds,
Yes.
specifically because of COVID, for interventionists. So my question is, and I'm not sure there's a direct correlation, but that's part of my question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the number of interventionists we had before COVID? And I guess my question is more along the lines of, are these interventionists that are now essentially part of our budget, at one point were these paid for through ESSER funds?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, which I believe is the case, do we imagine a need for interventionists for the foreseeable future? Is it just to recover from the learning loss that occurred during COVID? Just kind of paint the picture for me if this is related to ESSER, if at one point this was offset by ESSER, now this is in our budget, and if it's in our budget and it's because of learning loss during COVID, is this something we envision potentially moving beyond at some point, or this is just where we are today and for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so I wasn't here during that time frame, and Phil, you would definitely have a little bit more background and historical context around how Weston used those funds. I will say that I think there will always be a need for support for students. The number of students and the level of intensity is not something that we can all predict, but we all know that there will always be some level of support. It's just a matter of how many students need that support and to what extent we need to provide the time as outlined within the chart here. I mean, the ultimate goal, of course, is that there is no need for academic intervention support within Tier 2 and Tier 3. We're very fortunate here that our numbers are lower than most districts, but one of the aspects that varies, which is it's hard to explain, is that if you have, let's say, 40 students in a given school that need academic support, this is why it's important to understand the constraints within that multi-tiered system, is that doesn't mean you can divide 40 by 8 and get 40 groups, because the students that are in an intervention need to be working on the same goal. and that goal has to match the correct intervention to it. So that's why the complexity of an intervention schedule is really complex. It's hard to build. And in our district, especially, we have the correct interventions based on the explicit skills that are needed for literacy and math. And the group sizes are always redistributed so that the student need and the size of the group are connected together. So the ESSER funds, and Phil, you might want to chime in here. I don't believe that I can't remember if we ever got enough for one full-time position in that allocation. And we do use a portion of our title funds to support one position in our budget. But we don't receive enough title funds to even account for one full-time position. Is that accurate, Phil?
From the title funds perspective, it's partial.
Right.
In terms of how much money, we did not receive a lot of money for COVID. I would have to go back and look at the data to give you an accurate amount, if that's still needed.
No, I think my question is, and I'm not sure if I heard an answer, is is this due to learning loss during COVID, or is this just how we operate today? I heard you say, Tina, that you can't anticipate student needs and we need interventions to help those students. But are we at a point where it's elevated because of learning loss, or this is essentially what we can expect year over year outside of a significant unpredictable change?
Yeah, since I've been here, I'm entering my 5th year. This is a consistent number of academic support interventions that we've had for the last 5 years. So although the students change within the groups, the numbers seem to be consistent.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Shall we move on to the next follow-up question?
Yes.
Great. Okay, the next follow-up question I have as well, and the question was, have we ever asked our teachers directly about the impact of a curriculum and instructional leader's role? And in short, the answer is yes, but I'm going to elaborate. So teachers provide direct recurring feedback on the impact of curriculum and instruction leaders, although I like Mr. Burakoff's change of title to curriculum instruction liaison. That was interesting. CILs through formal district professional development evaluations, ongoing job embedded coaching interactions, and unsolicited anecdotal feedback throughout the school year. So this feedback provides clear evidence of the CIL's role in supporting instructional practice and student learning. So this table, I went back to this current school year from August, and the CIL team has provided 33 formal professional development sessions to our teachers since August. Each session, at the end of each session, it includes a standardized feedback form, and it's completed by every teacher that participates in that session. And we ask them a variety of different questions that rate the impact of the session on their instructional practice. It rates the content knowledge that they walked away with from that session, the anticipated student outcomes, as well as the quality and the relevance of the professional learning experience that the CIL designs and facilitates. So this is a cross-section of those 33 feedback forms, and it's aggregated across the department, not by individual facilitators. But the trend shows that there is a representative overall pattern and trend from our teachers, which rate primarily falling within the strongly positive and agree range. This is a collective view of the impact of the CIL department's work rather than focusing on just individual sessions that they've offered. So in addition, we also look for some common themes that emerged throughout the open-ended responses, and you'll see that that provides some context around some quantitative ratings as well. So together, the table offers a clear snapshot of how the teachers across the district perceive the value, the effectiveness, and the impact of a CIL and the formal professional development that they lead for our teachers. Several themes emerged from the analysis of the open-ended teacher feedback across the sessions. The teachers are not asking, those are some of the bottom ones here. The teachers are not asking whether CILs are valuable. They're asking for more time, more follow-up, more sustained access, and some continued job-embedded support that are given directly to them from their CILs because they know that the time that they spend with them, it impacts their instructional practice, which ultimately reflects in increased student learning. But it's important to know that we don't just look at those standardized feedback forms. Sometimes we also get some unsolicited comments and feedback, right? Because our CILs work beyond those professional development days that are planned and organized. They are working through formal coaching cycles with staff. They work with them through curriculum work and curriculum development. They co-plan with their departments and the teachers in their departments. They go in and model lessons. They provide classroom support. And they also work to develop collaboration opportunities across their departments. So this feedback, I just took a couple sound bites from some of the unsolicited feedback in the department, and it really underscores the value of why a CIL role and the embedded instructional leadership that they provide in between those planned professional development days is so critical. Because this is the through line that they play when it comes to curriculum adoption, curriculum implementation, shift in pedagogy, research, and just ongoing partnership and having a thought partner on how to professionally grow in this profession. So these are some unsolicited comments that reinforce what the formal data table that I showed you before demonstrates and the value of a CIL role. And hopefully it helps to clearly articulate its impact on their practice and student learning. And just so you know, this is a snapshot of some qualitative anecdotal notes, but then also through the formal professional development feedback forms that we gather. We also, on a yearly basis, do ask for additional survey questions within the departments. So there's more specific opportunities for us to take that information as a department to grow into these roles and see what some other explicit ways that our CILs can support teachers on a more granular level. Questions about the CILs?
Are teachers required to go to the professional development?
Are they required? Yes. I mean, it's part of their contractual year, unless they're sick and they can't attend that day. But yes,
So for
it's part of their
those,
school year.
so for those teachers who completed the form at a professional development session, the teachers were required to go to those sessions.
They are. They're scheduled. We create a schedule for them. We communicate that out. The March 27th professional development this year is one that we build a menu and they get to choose the session that they attend. But those sessions also have a feedback form where they're expected to complete it and give feedback to the facilitator. And we use that data throughout every single time we administer a feedback form. We review that data within our district professional development committee, and it helps us gauge and adjust how we can better improve the quality of the professional development for our teachers.
So it seems like a lot of people did not fill out the form.
So these are just anecdotal comments.
In the previous slide, you said it was based on 33 forms.
No, what I said was 33 sessions.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have 12 curriculum instruction leaders, just so everyone knows in the district, to support all the different content areas. So between August and November, those are the last 2 full professional development days that we've provided. Across the department, we've offered 33 different sessions. I did not include the count here, but all the teachers are required to attend, and we ask that they provide feedback on that form. Yeah. Good question. And I will say, just a common theme, I couldn't put them all on the screen because I couldn't fit them all. Our teachers have said over and over again, they really value having their own faculty members and members of their departments provide that professional development because they feel there's number one, a relationship and an understanding of where they currently are in their learning. And they really value having their own colleagues provide professional development to them. Okay. Any others?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
That concludes all of the questions that were submitted from board members and the supplemental questions that arose at the previous meetings. So we are complete.
Well, thank you, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all the members. We appreciate how thorough and comprehensive and your answers are, and your explanations and your data, both current and historical. So thank you for compiling all of that. And also thank you for posting a lot or all of this online so the public can also gain further understanding of some of the roles and responsibilities of positions and their titles. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So Superintendent 40, we are headed for 3 meetings next week around the budget. But I understand, before we sort of get into some of the specifics and our perspectives on the operating budget proposal, do you anticipate any adjustments to the budget request?
Yes, we have sort of an updated budget for you this evening. It's very simple. It's a very high level overview. Phil's going to present it to you, and it is as a result of some new knowns that have recently surfaced, specific to health insurance, positions, and other unanticipated reductions. So I'm going to turn it over to Phil. He may want to share his screen.
Well, I'm getting the screen ready. For those of you who have been on the board for a while, my favorite term is our expression is that this is a marathon, and it's a marathon that starts for us in October and will continue not at the end of January, but will continue all the way to when we present to the Board of Finance. But in the interim, I'm going to present to you some changes that we have. Give me one quick second. Let me try to get this right. And let me know if you guys can see this. Awesome. So from our last meeting with Chuck, I think Chuck spoke to us about the anticipated increase on the state partnership plan with a range between on the low end of 12 and at the high end at 15%. The 15% is typically what we can expect for Fairfield County. Our initial budget request included a 12.5%. Since then, and also since Monday or Tuesday of this week, the state updated their projection, and that projection remains unchanged as of right now. They will give us a further update in March, but all indications are that we can expect to see a 15% increase for health insurance. So the number that I have here, the 168,000 is a combination. Is a combination of health insurance premium anticipated and also anticipated employee and retiree cost share. So we'll have a plus of approximately 0.28% related to health insurance. Early retirement incentives. You will recall that the board did approve an early retirement incentive. The first of 3 payments will be approximately $84,000 beginning in fiscal year 27. Erica mentioned that we have pretty much looked at our staff, and you should know that our review of staffing to gain efficiency is an ongoing process. And whenever an opportunity presents itself, and we do evaluate that to see if any staffing efficiencies can be gained. As we look ahead to fiscal for rate of this year and also for fiscal 27, we have identified a position right now that will help or will give us greater efficiency while not compromising the service levels to our staff and also to our students. For that position, the combined salary and payroll taxes will be approximately $88,000. Also continuing, in our special education department, Tracy has identified additional savings as it relates to changing in student needs. So we do anticipate savings for SPED of approximately $170,000. So all in all, that's all those pluses and minuses will have a net effect more than overall. Our current request is approximately increase is 3.91%, which is down by 0.01%. And that's all the updates that we have currently.
Hey, Phil, it's Michael. Do you mind double clicking just on that insurance number there? So I guess since we last spoke about the insurance and we talked to Brown, the consultant, there was this meeting that was upcoming, right? That I guess, we just had essentially, where the state communicated, or I guess communicated that and reiterated that it would be 15%, let's say for Fairfield County. That number, that 168,000 and change, does that number then represent? And I know there are a couple of items within that number. If you can just dive into a little bit more, because I think, as you mentioned, we had budgeted 12.5. They're coming in at 15, but the 2.5% is more than this 168. So could you give me sort of give us the puts and takes to how you got to this number? Because I believe that 2.5% number increase would be much greater than this. Is that correct, or?
Yes, it is. So the number that's been presented here is the net. So you remember when Chuck mentioned that ultimately the final cost to the board will be our premium less any employee cost share. So on the gross side, the gross premium is just over 200,000. I think the number came in at about 210,000 or so. So the 40 or so thousand difference that you're looking at here represents the employee cost share.
Okay, got it.
Employee share of the premiums.
And so our next update here, and I guess the next and final update, I guess if I'm thinking about that correctly, that's going to be provided to us by the state in March. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.
And Phil, there hasn't been any indication that this might come down.
Based on the call earlier this week, the state is saying that the claims continue to trend negatively, and they do not anticipate any further reduction.
Okay, so it's now close to the end of January, and so I don't have a crystal ball, but there's no reason to think that this number will get better. And it's hard to tell if it might get worse. Is that a fair?
I think it's fair to say that it will not get any better in terms of where the worst. I do not anticipate that it'll be any worse. Chuck did mention in our last meeting that the state has been very mindful of any potential changes in their forecast. Because I think 2 to 3 years ago, they did provide a significant increase after they early suggested that the rates will be at a lower rate. So I think our worst case scenario is going to be the 15%.
Okay, thank you. If other board members have comments, I just, with the screen, with Phil's thing there, which is great, I think you want to look at it. Please just jump in.
Yeah, I have a question. So from two weeks ago when we met in person, I had spotted that the tuition for ELC reference was lower than the tuition that you mentioned in the meeting. And so I'm wondering if this updated budget reflects that.
The original budget that was presented does include the higher amount. The
Oh, okay.
narrative or the verbiage that needed correction.
Okay, thanks.
Well, this is the proverbial good news, bad news. I'm not exactly sure how it balanced out. I mean, it's fortuitous that it balanced out, that the good news caught up with the bad news, but I wish it had been only good news. So our budget increase on the operating side stands at 3.91. Am I right? From that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. We need to, again, come to a final determination early next week or later next week, depending on how many meetings we need. But it might be helpful to just look at a couple things. One is we haven't yet looked at our capital budget. And I think after speaking with Erica earlier today and Phil, that is scheduled for Monday morning, our workshop then. So I think that will be a hefty discussion. So we need to kind of reserve some bandwidth for that. The other thing is that if we want to make adjustments in any direction on our operating budget, we need to start indicating that so that the administration could figure out what the impact would be and what changes, if any, are needed. So I'm getting to the point now of asking the question of all board members, if you're prepared to say something, and perhaps you are, I'm hoping so. It's kind of the overall question about the operating budget and all the questions that have been asked and answered, and the final numbers that we've presented were presented with the rationale. How do we feel as individuals at this point about the operating budget request? Do we feel that it is too high? Do we feel that it is about right? Or do we feel that it is too low? And then from there, we can have more of a discussion. But I kind of would like a general sense of what your perspective is at this point. I think we've heard a lot of information, et cetera. If you can't make a judgment at this point, certainly you can pass, but we really have to come to this fairly soon in order to make our final decision. So I encourage you, if you have thoughts tonight, to please kind of weigh in now. And that will give us a sense of where we are as a group, and it will give the administration and the staff a chance to prepare if needed. So I'm not sure if anyone wants to start first or not. Okay. I used to be a teacher, and they used to have this thing called wait time, where you just kind of ask the question and then just kind of wait it out. So, and I really don't mean to put that kind of pressure on anybody, but.
Deb, I'll go first.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
I was waiting for David, but no, I'll go first. So my thought is 3.91 is still higher than I would like for it to be. It scares me because, I've had many people say, how long can we do this? This just isn't sustainable. And I get that. But at the same time, I also, we've been hit really hard with some things that we quite honestly can't cut. If the only way we are going to be able to really cut this budget is to start cutting teachers. And I think we've turned the administration into a pretzel to try to figure out where we can make a cut here and a cut there. And then we have parents who are coming on meetings tonight saying, please don't make cuts here and cuts there. So, do I love 3.91? No. Do I think that if we start making cuts the budget as we have it now, that it's going to start to negatively impact the students and their learning? Yeah, I do. Because unfortunately, it's only going to be with personnel. And I know that the administration is being as thoughtful as possible in trying to make sure that we're not overspending in areas where, you know, we would need to make these cuts in order to make an effective change. So, so I guess I've gotten to the point where and also looking around at other districts in the area and seeing where they are as far as a percentage increase is concerned, I think that we're actually pretty good. So I'm comfortable right now with the 3.91. There, I was the first one. Jump in, everybody else.
So I'll go next because ditto, Sharon. I totally agree with you. I think this is a very competitive budget. I think 3.9 is more than it usually is, except in these economic times and with the unusual costs of health insurance that are not only for the schools, but across the country. It is a very competitive budget, and it is very competitive for what's going on in Durgay. So I did what you say, and I think it was competitive and thoughtful. And, you know, looking closely at the budget and looking at it, we have some very successful programs. So it's not only that the money is being spent, but the data shows student success academically and emotionally with this budget.
Thank you. Anyone else?
All right, I'll jump in. So I think the budget is acceptable. I think that every year I feel like we have some obligation to keep our budget low in order to offset what the town is going to come back with their budget request. But that's not our problem at the end of the day. And I think we've heard from so many people that people move to Weston, my family included, for the schools. And so I think that this board at times, I know I do, feel pressure to keep our budget low to offset what the town is going to do. I think this year is probably going to be the year of the reckoning, so to speak, because you know, we have our operating budget, we have our capital budget, we have a new school, facilities, and so forth. So I think to keep looking at destroying the education system in Weston to try and keep our budget low so that the town can do their thing doesn't make a lot of sense. We have to focus on what we're here for. Our board is the Board of Education. We're here to educate the kids, continue to give the kids the education that they get in a town like this, and let the town deal with their financial problems. So I'm in support of our budget because this is why people move to Weston.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Only one left, or is Michael still on the phone?
Michael's there
Still
too.
here.
I'm here. I'm still
Oh,
here.
okay. I'll wait if Michael
And
wants to
Nicole.
chime in.
Okay, Peter, do you have the floor?
Oh, sure. I just have an observation. Excellent work, by the way. I think this may be the best sessions I've had in my 4 years on the board. For the benefit of ourselves, I think for the benefit of this district and its staff, and certainly for the benefit of parents and non-parents. I think they really understand the operations of the school district. My observation, and I almost wanted to give a pop quiz, but we're all getting tired of my pop quizzes. But in the sentence, we continue to maintain, what's the adverb and what's the verb? The adverb is continue, the verb is maintain. And that's sort of the observation of our budgeting. And remarkably, there was a letter in Weston today by Mr. Haythorne. And in his first paragraph, I think he caught on to that. He called it status quo, but we continue to maintain. Good news is we maintain it at a pretty high level. The balance you have against that is either great austerity, we're not going there, or where we heard from parents tonight, right? Can we have aspirations for the future? Sort of echo things I think I've said in the past and others. That's not going to happen, but I think it informs the superintendent or staff that the parents may want to see more than less, moving forward, because you can hear lots of good ideas that have been generated. But again, that's not happening in this budget session, maybe next year. So in general, my observation is approval, right? I mean, this is our continuing to maintain, but are maintaining at pretty high standards. So that's to echo David, that's our job, right? Our job is to drive the school district forward. And if this is the budget that does it for fiscal year 27, this is the budget that does it. That's sort of my last input.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Salary increases for staff in the CBAs, is that because I know that they were just finalized last year? Do those increase every single year, or is that a one-time increase for the duration of the CBA? It's
Contract.
That is an increase every single year, either both with GWI, gross wage increase, and also combined with step increase for teachers who are not at max step.
okay. So I would agree with everybody else. It's really tough to trim a budget when the bulk of the budget is going to salary and health insurance. I would agree with David. Individualized education is something to be celebrated and something that parents want for their children. And it's something that can be done in a small school district. And it's really hard to make, for me personally, it's really hard to try to tweak, as somebody said in public comment, things that are relating to staffing, because you don't know, we don't know how that's going to end up. And I was on the receiving end of that last year and was with a lot of other parents who were very, very, very disappointed to see some beloved teachers at risk of losing their jobs. And they would have done anything to save their teachers, but it was out of their control. So I really don't want to be involved in doing that. I guess I would say, and I really appreciate everybody's preparation of answers to questions. It's really helpful. I have learned so much through this process. But again, similarly to public comments, do sometimes wonder, outside of the staffing, all of these really bigger items, what's going on in some of these smaller line items? How is the day-to-day really looking with some of the things that you're using in school? And maybe there are efficiencies that can be made. Maybe you don't need to use a certain software. I know Tina was talking about Tina and Dan, if we use AI, then it might render other software unnecessary. And so there could be efficiencies in the longer term. But I think some of those smaller day-to-day things, really questioning whether some of it's necessary or something else can be done, because and also I think a lot of school and work life is about good culture, having a good employer, feeling good about where you work, feeling valued, feeling appreciated, especially in a place where staff and professionals are at the heart of what makes our system work and be successful. So I would rather keep morale positive and continue to try to improve it with staff than try to cut.
All right, thank you. Michael, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in just really quickly because I pretty much agree with what everyone else has said. Look, from the beginning, I think, of this budget season, it was apparent that there were, two major line items here that were driving the bulk of the increases, right? And the opportunity to impact this in a significant way would have to address one of those two line items, which were, of course, headcount and the health insurance. Unfortunately, the health insurance has come in a little bit higher than we expected. And I think it's become apparent throughout this whole process that unless we're willing to make meaningful changes that may cut into muscle here and have knock-on effects with respect to headcount, there's just not much here for us to really cut in those two line items. I appreciate actually Nicole's comments on just, going through the line items and just trying to find efficiencies. And I think we've done a reasonable job of that this year, actually. And there have been a lot of questions that have been really good questions. I just, at this point, I don't see where we're going to get any meaningful savings from where the budget stands today. The way I look at it is last year when everyone else's budget around in our area, they were going up by 3.5%, 4.5%. We kept our budget last year under 3% in terms of a year-over-year increase. And so this year, I would imagine that we are not going to be an outlier. And so if I look at the 2 years together, we're probably still the lowest increase of any of the districts sort of in the surrounding area. So would I have liked it lower? Yes. Am I willing to, again, given all of the questions that you all have answered, which has been really appreciated, am I willing to cut sort of into muscle here to, try to save, I don't know, a couple percent, a half percentage point, a quarter percentage point? Look, our first responsibility is to ensuring positive student outcomes here. And so, at this point, I think I'm pretty satisfied. Again, I would love it lower, but I'm pretty satisfied, where we ended up, given all the circumstances that we've had to deal with this year.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing?
Of course.
I know that we've all talked about how we want to keep and, celebrate our teachers, but just for people watching, to put it into a larger context, and any of you administrators can chime in or add more to the extent it's helpful, but there is a statewide teacher shortage in Connecticut. It is really, really hard to hire good teachers. It's really hard to get well-certified teachers. And so if we are in a district that is WIS Blue Ribbon, #3 high school, and it's because of the teachers that we have, I really don't want to be losing good teachers in this climate.
Good point. Okay. Well, thank you all for your comments, and I am so pleased that we are basically all on the same page with a little grumbling under our breath. I started out thinking 3.91 was, within the realm of reasonable, but it needed to come down. Like all of you, ideally, I would like to see it lower, and I would have suggested, maybe to Michael's point, in the range of trying to get it down a half a point or so. That became impossible to me tonight after looking at the newest insurance increase. That wiped out potential savings that we could have actually gotten closer to maybe a 3.5 or a 3.6. But the insurance really ran away, is the train that sort of took this budget and ran. So I think what we need to do, though, for the future is look at how we can, I don't know, afford isn't the right word, but how we can plan for insurance costs. And that's going to take some outside expertise or some guidance or something, but we cannot sustain a 15% annual increase in insurance. That is crazy. I'm hoping that is not the new normal. So we need to try to focus on, I don't know what strategies there are, what other districts are doing. Is there a solution? And maybe the answer is no. But on a school budget, again, where most of our money is in staff and benefits, it's a killer. So I think we need to kind of wrap our arms in terms of planning forward what to do. I also haven't given up on maybe we could lose a bus. So Phil, please don't unask the question, please pursue it. And And also, and maybe this is not for a conversation tonight, but I asked you earlier, we have some money in what's called the, what is it? The Internal Service Fund, that is reserved for insurance emergencies at this point around dental plans, as I understand it. I could be totally wrong. But I'm wondering, there is a bit of reserve there, and I'm not suggesting that we wipe it out, but it might be something that we have a conversation with the town about. And is now a time with such a dramatic increase in health insurance that we can put a little bit towards that, or maybe the difference is so insignificant it doesn't matter. So those are just my two thoughts on. I am grasping at ways to bring the budget down a little bit. But I agree with everyone else that what we have in Weston is too valuable to risk its quality. And I so appreciate the thoughtfulness and the comprehensive answers to everything. So unless we, looked at programs and said, okay, which we don't want to do, and that really is the only place in this budget to go. Counting the textbooks and the pencils and stuff, while not unimportant, I think we have done that, and I think the staff has done a great job with that too. So we will face Monday morning, depending on how much snow we have to dig out from under, but the meeting is going to be via Zoom. So let's hold it on our calendar, hope that we still have power. There may be unanticipated situations that arise, so we'll be certainly in contact. But the next kind of bear that we have to tackle is the capital budget. And there's some news around that's going to be challenging as well. So let's, you could review it tonight I'm sorry, before Monday, not tonight, but before Monday's meeting. And then Phil will take us through that. And then there's some news to add with that. There's a challenge there as well. So any other comments for tonight?
I would just like to, if you don't mind, Debbie,
Of course.
Thank the board for your attention and listening to our responses of all the questions that you submitted. They were really thoughtful questions, and they gave us an opportunity to really talk and educate and lift the community's knowledge and be transparent about what we do here in Weston Public Schools. I'd also like to thank the principals and the cabinet members for all the time and effort that they spent in putting into those responses, and also all of our back end meetings that led to the 3.92, and for their thoughtfulness in how we can reduce headcount without impacting individuals specific to layoffs. And I appreciate the board's support in this budget. And I just want to let you know that we are committed to continually taking a look at it. And when those opportunities arise, where there's a natural attrition, and we can evaluate that opportunity and figure out if we can move forward without potentially rehiring, we will do that intensely and be responsible in that manner. So it is always the intent not to lose or reduce staff or see people who are really good teachers, to Nicole's point, leave this district. But I think we do need to capitalize on opportunities that are presented to us where we could naturally make changes and look for efficiencies when they present themselves. So thank you very much to the principals, the cabinet members, and to the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And I think one of the biggest gifts tonight, in addition to our excellent staff representing a tremendous program, is the fact that all of us as board members have come to the same conclusion. And I think hopefully what will become eventually a unanimous vote on the budget is really important, because I think that sends a message to the community as well, that we have looked at things thoroughly from totally different perspectives many times and come to the same conclusion. I think that's really valuable. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, before I make a motion, I would love to make that motion, but I want to thank the administration. I think that you guys did a wonderful job handling all these questions, and you were so thorough in your answers, and it was great both for the board and also for the people who are viewing these videos and who are in attendance. The thoroughness was just great, and you made it abundantly clear that you have not left any stones unturned. So I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. I know it took a lot of time, and as a board, I'm sure everyone here would probably nod a lot, saying we all appreciate all the work you put into this. So thank you to everyone for doing that. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. That wasn't fast enough, David. All right. All in favor?
Yeah, I.